Disney has come a long way from the perfect pretty princess who was lifted from the depths of some sort of despair by the handsome Prince Charming. There are still Prince Charmings, and still pretty princesses, but as the world turns, we've realized that a woman doesn't need a man to save her. In fact, half the time, she's doing the saving of the love of her life, her kingdom, her family, or even herself. With the release of the new trailer for Raya and the Last Dragon, an epic female-led adventure flick, it's the perfect time to explore the origins of the Disney Damsel and how these new princesses are changing what young girls think of traditional feminine power.
Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big, strong man showed up?
Yes!
Disney's very first princess was the dazzling Snow White in 1937. With unparalleled beauty, fair skin, hair dark as night, and a voice that called to countless woodland animals, she was the perfect model of what Disney thought a princess should be. The creation of Snow White was just the first in a line of formulaic Disney damsels, followed soon after by Cinderella in 1950 and Aurora in 1959. In these stories, there was a young girl in despair who needed to be saved by the dashing Prince Charming. The stories would end in a happily ever after, which usually meant marriage.
It's like a dream, a wonderful dream.
In the early days of the Disney princess, there was a certain mold to fit. She was virtuous, kind, and beautiful. She could also easily be transformed into the perfect picture of a princess, thanks to, let's say, a fairy godmother. And others were often jealous of her beauty, like Cinderella's stepsisters or any number of evil witches. These princesses also had something very traumatic in common. They were trapped. Cinderella was a maid in her own home. Snow White and Aurora were cursed and isolated. And Ariel, who joined the Disney universe in 1989, wanted to escape the sea for a life on land. Still, despite the hardships, the princesses remain resilient and kind. This has a lot to do with how females express their gender identity. Weakness was endearing, dresses were a requirement, makeup and hair were always important, and becoming a wife to a handsome man, usually with money, was a sought-after fantasy.
Someday my prince will come.
These girls often discover little about themselves compared to their biggest revelation, which is that they're in love and completely ready to marry the guy that they're sure is the one. That's not to diminish the impact of these movies and the magic they brought us all, but they are very much a product of their time, when marriage was a necessary accomplishment. But the Disney damsel is often underestimated. Jasmine was first introduced in 1992, and she wasn't interested in marrying someone her father chose for her.
Then maybe I don't want to be a princess anymore.
She was also brave and capable. Other early princesses who showed off this kind of choose-your-own-adventure attitude are Ariel, who chose to leave the sea for land, and Mulan, introduced in 1998, who chose to go off to war and fight for her family. These stories were the start of the Disney princess as a rebel, not as a passive girl being transported through her own story. There are a few ways that Disney princesses have rebelled over the years, but they often fit into two categories: rebelling against tradition and rebelling against the typical love story. When it comes to tradition, we can think of Belle, who first graced our screens in 1991. Reading is one of her most rebellious traits, and men like Gaston points it out constantly as if it's a huge personality flaw. She refused to be the traditional feminine character, and this also gives the Disney princess her own autonomy. Belle wasn't just trapped with the Beast, she chose to go with him to save her father. Sure, it might not seem like a hard choice to make, but it demonstrates just how brave a so-called damsel can be. Jasmine also portrays this defiance, refusing to go along with exactly what her father wants, even though it's what's expected of her. In the live action, this is even more apparent, as she wants to become Sultan of Agrabah herself.
You have shown me courage and strength.
Ariel also rebelled against her family and her father's royal expectations. When it comes to romance, not all Disney princesses are called to adventure in order to find their own true love. Pocahontas changed the narrative in 1995 when she fell in love with John Smith, but ultimately chose to stay with her tribe. Mulan also fell in love, but her motivation to join the war had absolutely nothing to do with romance, and she accomplished her goal before letting herself focus on her love story. As these types of stories gained popularity, we started to see another shift in the way a Disney princess is portrayed. As she becomes rebellious, she also starts to rebel against the idea of needing a love interest. It's not just about being able to choose the man she'll marry, but also being able to choose not to marry at all. Even with feminist characters like Belle, we saw a focus on the power of romantic love in a fairy tale. Her love could literally change a monster back into a man. But as girls and young women yearn for a call to adventure, we start to see these amazing fantasies that don't center on romantic love. Merida from Brave is one example, or Moana, and even Elsa. The trailer for Raya and the Last Dragon also doesn't tease any type of love story. Raya is looking for a dragon, not a prince. Disney has also focused on different types of love that aren't romantic, like Moana's love for her people, Elsa and Anna's sisterly love, and the powerful mother-daughter bond shown in Brave. In Maleficent, it's the love of a motherly figure that wakes Aurora, not some Prince Charming. Even when there is love, Disney has started to flip the script a little on how it's shown. Frozen does contain a love story, but Anna and Kristoff's relationship is an endearing subplot, not the entire purpose of the story. In Tangled, Rapunzel saves Flynn, awakening him in a scene that reminds us of when the handsome prince would kiss the sleeping princess, but the roles are reversed. This change from damsel to heroine doesn't have to diminish the more feminine character, and it actually allows us to shatter the glass ceiling on what a strong woman should look like. Disney demonstrates this best by pairing together some very different female characters who have their own motivations, dreams, strengths, and weaknesses that don't trap them in one particular box. The Princess and the Frog illustrates these differences with Tiana and Charlotte. Tiana dreams of owning a restaurant, and Charlotte dreams of marrying a prince, but neither of them seems inferior to the other. In Frozen, Elsa and Anna are very different sisters, with Anna being a bit more romantic and tender-hearted, and Elsa being more resistant to love and tradition, and focused on her own personal growth. Plus, Elsa has strong powers, and Anna doesn't. Both sisters have things in common, but are still very different. But in both of these films, being different doesn't keep these women from still being best friends. One of the most important messages these films display to young girls and boys is that it's okay to look up to a Disney princess, even to see yourself as one, because that femininity isn't automatically bad. It's just not the only way there is to be. These Disney heroines also represent their own independence, going off on journeys on their own, even when all they see ahead of them is danger. This shift from a princess needing to be protected to her literally saving everyone has opened up a whole new world of skills for the traditional Disney damsel. And Disney's newest movies are always focused on showing off the new ways a Disney princess can take on the world and take care of herself. Of course, the most obvious way that Disney tries to subvert expectations of the traditional fairy tale and show off a character's independence is with women that can fight. And usually, they can fight really, really well. There's Mulan, of course, and rebellious Merida. There's also Moana, who takes the lead over an actual demigod to save her island. These Disney princesses also fight back in their own way, like how Mulan uses her particular skills as a warrior and doesn't just rely on physical strength, or how Moana realizes that Teka is Tefiti. Rapunzel is also not afraid to strike first and ask questions later, even with a very non-traditional weapon. Remakes have helped to make this even more obvious in some cases, and given Disney a chance to redevelop some of their characters, like Jane in the live-action Tarzan, who refuses to be a damsel. There's more of a focus on fighting in the live-action Mulan, and even a grungier and more feisty Snow White in Snow White and the Huntsman. Ralph Breaks the Internet was another opportunity for Disney to bring back its most famous princesses, and the first thing they do is grab weapons and prepare themselves to fight. These adventure stories are getting even more popular in the Disney universe. Think of the mother in Onward.
I am a mighty warrior.
Rushing to her son's rescue, and of course the trailer for Raya and the Last Dragon, which promises a true adventure story starring a strong female character. These characters are no longer being pushed through their story by destiny. They're taking destiny into their own hands. As female motivations and personalities become more diverse, so are their bodies, albeit a bit more slowly. The mother in Onward is one example, as is Wreck-It Ralph's Vanellope, with her small size and distinctive voice, all uncharacteristic of a princess.
Ladies, I'm a princess too.
Moana is another female character with more realistic proportions, and it looks like Raya's character design is also less dainty than a lot of other Disney heroines. In Up, we also get to see a more realistic portrayal of bodies and the process of aging. But body diversity is still an area where Disney needs a lot more work. We still don't have a plus-sized princess, for example. They also need to work on inclusivity of sexual orientations, gender identity, and including even more people of color. Though Disney has been making strides with more and more culturally diverse princesses. As the world continues to change, it's only natural that Disney will change with it. It's been a part of shaping how we see the world and view fantasy and fairy tales for 100 years. And it's not about to slow down anytime soon. So, while princesses may be ever-changing, we shouldn't count out the Cinderellas and Snow Whites of the world as being too modest or meek. Being strong, confident, and rebellious are things we all work on. We shouldn't put other women down for fitting a certain mold, especially when these women are fantasy characters that had to exist within certain social constraints. We love Aurora, we love Cinderella, but we're happy that as society moves forward, so do Disney princesses. And we're ready for the next generation of badass women who can help teach little girls and boys that being feminine isn't bad, being masculine isn't bad either, and that we all have the right to be exactly who we are in this crazy, complicated, amazing world. So, what do you think about how Disney princesses have evolved? What changes would you like to see Disney make next? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Plus, don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.